Many people think that positive reinforcement-based training or force-free training is just about throwing treats at the dog, having no boundaries and rules, and just letting the dog do whatever the dog wants to do. But that's not true. So let's shine a light on what positive reinforcement-based training or force-free training actually is, how we can use it, what limitations there are, and I'll give you something in the end that will make it very easy to recognize if it is force-free training or not. So let's dive in. So what force-free dog training is that we do not use positive punishment. Now, sometimes positive punishment sounds a little bit confusing, so let's see what that is. We do something to the dog that is either scary or painful, so something uncomfortable, so that the dog will stop the behavior in the long run. So for example, your dog is lunging, barking, growling at another dog, and you throw keys next to your dog. Your dog startles, and next time you see another dog, your dog doesn't bark anymore. That is positive punishment. And that's what we don't use with reinforcement-based training, because it's not necessary. And of course, there are implications to doing something uncomfortable to our dogs, right? So it affects the relationship, it affects the dog's well-being, and that's why we don't use it. What we do is we make unwanted behavior, so like lunging, barking, growling, impossible or no longer necessary for the dog. So we stop the behavior just like positive punishment does, we just do it differently. If we stick with the example of lunging, barking, growling, we pick a distance our dog feels comfortable in and start training there. So the dog no longer feels the need to escalate and we can get closer after that. So the result is the same on the outside. On the inside, we see very different emotions, right? And what those unwanted things are is up to you. Some people don't mind if the dog's begging for food right next to the table. Some people do mind. So this is something that's up to you. Always consider your dog's well-being, of course. But other than that, your household, your rules, right? What we include in positive reinforcement or force-free training is the needs our dogs have and the hobbies they like to engage in. Now, that's not always possible, right? We cannot entertain every hobby our dog has, like chasing some wildlife, stuff like that. But we provide them with as many outlets as we can. And we can use all those things to get what we want, right? So we want to see our dogs do something like looking at us. And we can reward them with allowing them to watch a deer, right? So it's not just treats. But of course, we don't only use the needs and the hobbies of our dogs for training. To give our dogs an overall happy life, we include them in our everyday situations as well, as much as we can, right? Because our dogs are captive animals. They are completely reliant on us to provide them with whatever they need, right? They can't get food on their own, they can't get water on their own, they can't have social contacts on their own, they can't go outside to pee when they want on their own, or at least in many households they can't. They can't do any hobbies. We decide where they sleep, what they play with, and so on. So it's our responsibility as the dog parents, as the guardians, provide them with what they need, right? For their physical and mental well-being. What we also do in positive reinforcement-based training is we do not rely as much on labels, and we call a spade a spade. So a dog is not dominant. That's not a characteristic thing. It's not a personality trait. It's resource guarding. So we call it resource guarding. That's just easier and it takes negative emotions out of the relationship. Now maybe this sounds like a lot of work, but positive-based training is neither faster nor slower in general than balanced dog training, so using corrections. Sometimes it's faster, sometimes it's slower. It really depends on your dog, the situation you're in, the issues you're dealing with. so many different things. So we cannot just say one's faster than the other. It's really dependent on many things. What we do with positive reinforcement-based training is that we really focus on the relationship and that both parts of the relationship feel happy and safe, right? We can't feel happy all the time. That's a given, right? But we can see that we don't fight with our dogs, but we find common ground and work together and to just enjoy life together, right? So we are creating a safe bond with our dogs. The concept of that comes from human psychology, the safe attachment theory thing, right? So if you're into that, that's where it comes from. We provide our dogs with co-regulation, so we help them deal with stress until they can do it on their own, right? Same with babies. And we offer them social support whenever they need them. Again, they are dependent on us, right? So it's on us to help them feel safe. So maybe you've seen the connection between raising kids and teaching kids stuff and dogs. Now, I'm not a mom, but I've worked with moms and they all said the same thing. Well, isn't this kind of the same as we do with kids? And yes, it is. The whole concept of dog training and dog psychology and stuff like that comes from human psychology, or at least a lot of it comes from human psychology. And if we see how raising kids developed in the past, we did have a time when humans thought that kids needed pain to learn. They needed to touch the hot stove to realize that this isn't a good idea. I never touched a hot stove, and I still know that it's not a good idea. So how did I learn that? It's not necessary to feel the pain, right? And that's when we realized that this isn't necessary with our kids, spanking them or hitting them with whatever became socially unacceptable. And we will get there with our dogs as well, right? Before that realization, kids were traumatized by these methods. Not all of them, but many. And it's the same thing with our dogs. We see the same pattern. So why not jump ahead of the development and just stop it now? So this all sounds awesome, right? But I said something about limitations in the beginning, so what are those? Well, we cannot reward everything out of our dogs. The limits are basically the dog's personality and the circumstances. So we cannot get our dogs into a corpse-like state where they don't behave at all anymore. That's not possible, positive reinforcement training. So it's the same thing for us, right? If we are like 5 feet tall and we like basketball, but we live in a country where there is no basketball league, will we be able to become professional basketball players? Maybe, but we would have to change the circumstances a lot to get there. Now, same thing for our dogs. If we have like a livestock guardian breed or a molosser who have bred to be skeptical about new people and other things, we might not be able to make a social butterfly out of that dog, but we can teach the dog skills and techniques to be fine in our everyday lives, right? So what we do is we accept the dog for who he is, and then we find ways to increase our quality of life together, so our own and our dogs, with realistic goals and with training that improves our relationship. Now, I promised you I will give you something that makes it very easy to find out if something is force-free or not. It's a question. And my first trainer asked me this question. At first I got mad, but then I realized that this is just genius. So the question is, would you like somebody to do this to you? If the answer is yes, you're probably good. If the answer is no, switch to a different strategy. And there is one thing in positive reinforcement-based training that is an absolute superpower, an absolute game changer. It will make training so much easier. And what that is, you can find out in this video.